This is Frankly MSP, where managed service providers get real.
Hey, and welcome to episode 16 of Frankly MSP, a podcast for managed service providers who want to boost their productivity, efficiency, and profitability. I'm your host, Jennifer Tribe. Today on the show, I'll be talking to Ted Hulsy. Ted is a channel veteran. Some of you may know him from his time at eFolder or SonicWall or more recently Itopia. Ted has recently started as partner marketing lead at Dropbox, so I expect we'll soon start to see some interesting things for MSPs coming from Dropbox now that Ted is there. Ted and I will be chatting about vendor relationships today and how you can leverage those relationships with your vendors to get, as Ted calls it, more than your fair share of resources and really use that to fuel your MSP growth. That's later in the show, but of course, before we get to that, we turn to Richard Tubb and Carl Palachuk to take a look at what's going on in the world through an MSP lens. This particular segment of What's Going On was recorded live in front of an MSP audience in New Orleans, where Carl and Richard were speaking at Carl's SMB Roadshow. The guys talk about the new threat report from WebRoot and pass the mic to the audience as well to hear about some of the challenges and issues MSPs are facing in trying to keep their clients secure.
You're listening to Frankly MSP, brought to you by Avik Networks.
Hey folks, Richard Tubb here with a very special edition of What's Going On. I'm joined by my friend and MSP expert, Carl Palachuk. And normally Carl and I would be talking via an IP connection, but today we're together in person in New Orleans.
It's amazing. So you don't have to ask me where I am.
Incredible, I know. Carl, really good to see you, mate. And we're not alone here as well. They came for the SMB Roadshow, but they stayed for the podcast. We've got a room full of the USA's top MSPs and beautiful people, all of them. Say hello to the Avik podcast.
Hello. Hey.
Cool. So we're going to take some questions as we go along for this episode, but I wanted to kick things off with a story that caught my eye this week that I want to get your feedback on, Carl. WebRoot, the cybersecurity company, they released their 2018 cybersecurity threat report this week. Cyber criminals are finding new tactics to infiltrate systems on a daily basis. And I think all the MSPs, especially people in the room, staying on top of these threats is really essential for an MSP who wants to keep their clients protected. So the cybersecurity report came up with a few interesting things. To give you some statistics to start up with, WebRoot said they analyzed more than 27 billion URLs, 600 million domains. I think you own about 300 million of those, don't you?
300 million, yes.
4.3 billion IP addresses, 62 million mobile apps, and 52 million connected servers. There's a lot of machines out there, isn't there?
So this is the world of big data.
Yeah. The thing that jumped out at me, the really interesting statistic, though, was that polymorphic attacks. So polymorphic, we mean where it's something that changes every single time. Polymorphic attacks accounted for 93% of the malware that was encountered during this WebRoot survey. 93% of that malware was only ever seen on one machine at a time.
98%.
98%.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is that we are so far past the world of signatures. I don't even think anybody even uses them anymore. They do exist. I know they're out there, but they have, big sites that make a big deal. Oh, put your signature or put your virus code up here and see if it shows up. And that's sort of irrelevant, right? It's all got to be behavior-based and big data and lots of computing power. It's one of those things where it's not something that it goes back to a site that runs a code on a database that literally can't exist anymore because they have to stop even trying to look at the code. There'd be no point if they're going to change every second.
Exactly, yeah. The other thing that jumped out to me is WebRoot were talking about cryptojacking. Now, this is a fairly new phenomenon. Most of us are familiar with ransomware, which is the bad guys install something on a client's machine, encrypts all the data, and then the client's got to pay to get rid of it. Cryptojacking is a little bit different. It's actually hijacking a machine for its CPU power to mine cryptocurrency in the background. That's interesting, isn't it? So this is totally invisible to end users. And of course, it should give you the cold sweats if any of your clients are then complaining, my machine's running slow.
Exactly.
Now you've got something new to be terrified and keep you awake all of the night. But ransomware still out there, phishing, but cryptojacking seems to be the next big thing.
Well, hijacking, it's so interesting because The clients who are at the greatest danger are small businesses because they don't have high-end. They don't buy $20,000 firewalls. They buy $3,000 firewalls, if that.
If that, yeah. So let's throw it out to the audience here, you beautiful people in the world of MSPs. What are you seeing out in the world of cyber security at the moment? What's keeping you awake?
Phishing attempts.
Phishing attempts.
How some of these specific viruses are getting onto machines. They're very targeted phishing attempts to the end user to get them to take that it's not going to be the same for each user. Therefore, you get a very specific malware.
How are you educating your clients about these phishing attempts? How do you say to them, don't click on the bad stuff?
Well, actually, we're using some of the WebRoot product, doing training with them, and then we're going to start to send out targeted phishing attempts with the ability to go back to the end users and say, this is what you clicked on when you shouldn't have, and remediate those users so they can start to understand what to look for.
That's very interesting, isn't it? Does anybody else in the room have an issue where they say to clients, don't click on this bad stuff, and they say, yeah, we won't? Targeted phishing attacks, of course, you can actually almost slap them in the face, can't you, with the evidence and say, you clicked on it. After all, anybody else doing targeting phishing attacks?
Well, what you had said, we've had one lady in general that has clicked 3 different times and been hit 3 different times. Luckily, we have BDR in place to save it, but she has done it 3 times, and we have reprimanded her, and she still continues to do it.
Wow.
Well, it looks so rude.
But that gets down to training. The accountant at this one firm, she's very good because there's a lot of ACH transitions. And her boss is out of town a lot, and these come through, and she'll see one. If it doesn't look right, she's well trained now. Where I go, think about it right now. Does your boss ever speak that way? And she's going, no, I don't think he'd use those words. So that's the type of stuff we try to instill into them. If it's coming from somebody you know, would they really misspell that word? Would they talk like that? And then we talk to them about, or at least I have, if you get this ransomware, what it's going to cost to mediate it means you don't want to raise this for everybody probably for a year, at best.
But things are becoming really, really good, aren't they? I mean, some of the phishing attempts that I'm seeing come through, we're used to the African princes getting in touch with us and saying, hey, we want to transfer some money across. The stuff that I'm seeing coming through is, I'm tempted to click on it, and I'm ultra vigilant. So are we seeing this type of stuff out there?
Part of what happens is that they can now do millions of addresses at a time. So somebody's using PayPal, somebody's using Bank of America, and the attachments, one of the worst technologies ever invented is hiding the extension, .doc.exe, and all you see is the doc, and people click on it.
Josh, what are you seeing over there in New Mexico?
So we use, happen to be with Know before, but other players like ReSecure are out there as far as user training and targeted phishing. The thing that's helpful is the reports, because everybody has, if you've ever seen Danos present, they'll tell you everybody has somebody that'll click on anything. Unfortunately, everybody has a lot of people who click on some things. And like you say, I have also once been fooled by these phishing attacks. I think the only person I know that hasn't is my wife, which is amazing. No, maybe not. She's pretty suspicious. My problem right now is we're running up against what I refer to as security fatigue. People are sick of hearing of the next attack. They're sick of being told to be more careful. They're sick of being sold more secure solutions because they're basically overwhelmed with this. They develop that fatigue. And you have to find a way to reach out to them that's different from everything else we've been doing for years.
Any suggestions on the difference? How can we get that word out there?
We use video, and we use examples, and we use humor. And I also like to compare the costs, break things down as to how they cost by the minute or the second. And somebody else already referred to the ramifications of spending $35,000 in 1 year, as not our customer, but one person we know did, and how much that can affect their business. But it is very hard.
But like a lot of companies, we've disabled any outside email from Yahoo to Gmail. That way, nothing personal can ever come in. And we tell them if for some reason they feel like clicking on it because they believe it's true, we tell them if they have a company device, whether it be an iPad or an iPhone, to check it there, because those devices will actually tell you if it's going to .India, whatever, instead of the real thing. And we've had at one of the car dealerships, the president of the car dealership supposedly email and ask for a wire transfer. And like you said, you look at the wording or different things. And so they paused instead of doing it. Normally, if he said something, they would have jumped. But they just took a moment and said, well, this was odd. But because nowadays they're accessing the address books or something from somewhere and targeting actually the right people when you say target, because they're going to people, they're not sending it to the parts manager, they're sending it to the accounting people directly.
Yeah. And what we see now is something odd where it comes from a business that's actually in our area, like in the zip code, and when it shows their web address down there, that's correct for that. And we will sit there and, again, they catch it and go like, I don't recognize any of this. And I'll call whose name this is at that location. They have no idea that.
It's very sophisticated. It's almost like the cell phone calls you get where they use your home zip code, your prefix, and it looks like it's in your neighborhood, but it's not, of course. And then they target these very specific people. Part of this is, all of us can assume all of our data has been stolen at least once. And it's now in big, huge databases that are for sale on the dark web, period. End of story.
Equifax has been hacked twice now, right? And imagine the data that they have. We've got the cyber storm coming. We haven't been hit. You and I haven't been hit.
Well,
but they've got our data, right? They know
we talk about the exponential century.
Yeah.
Well, the bad guys now have Tensor processors.
Well, it's just like some of the malware attacks that are happening from these spoofs and stuff like that. We got called in the other day to go to a company. Their IT people dropped the ball, if you will, and they did get hit by malware, or actually a crypto virus. And they had backups, but they didn't have they destroyed their local backups. But they have so much data in the cloud, it was going to take a week to get all the data back. Well, they were losing $250,000 a day by not being productive. So now they were like, well, they asked us, would you deal with the people to get our data back? And I said, well, we don't really suggest doing such a thing. I said, but if you need someone to buy the Bitcoin and do the things, we will step in as a consultant and do all these things, because they felt it was cheaper to pay at the time, to try to recover it. But when I dealt with the guys who I could tell by the time we chased some of the IPs and their dialogue that they were Russian, they knew exactly how many documents they had encrypted. Because I played this for us role, all this stuff, we can't afford these things. And he goes, well, we encrypted 20 million documents. I mean, I'm pretty sure y'all been in business for a while. Yeah. If you have such things. And this is where we want to be at if you want your stuff back in a timely manner.
Yeah. Matthew, what are you seeing?
There's two things I learned at a security conference, and the speaker was talking about how us as MSPs may want to consider having Bitcoin on hand for a case like you described, where you've taken over from another person, you drop the ball, and it's a security breach.
It doesn't have a good backup.
Because you can't get Bitcoin overnight. It's not like you put on your American Express and want to be motivated.
You can now if you know that.
Yeah, I learned a couple of years ago, but they were saying, have it staged and have, don't be ashamed to pay, but know that it's going to Eastern Europeans and they're using that money not for good purposes. The second thing was talking about C-level executives and those emails that float back with regards to wire transfers is have a second set of internal passwords. If I send you if I'm CEO sending a wire transfer to CFO, sign it Batman, and the CFO replies Robin. So there's a second form of communication. And they're also suggesting using a different domain that's not published for your business, like go register a totally odd domain name for email and only use that for specific financial transactions, so that if there's going to be a communication, transfer X number of dollars, it's always going to come from a non-published, non-linked domain to another user at that same domain that's not out there on the web.
The idea of paying the ransomware absolutely boggles my mind, because once the system has been compromised, how can you ever,
You have no idea.
it's not, these guys are not nice guys. They're not going to say, well, you've paid the ransom this time, you know what, we're not going to hit you again. If I was one of the bad guys, I'd be like, right, I'm going to again and again.
It's like when we've had break-ins in our neighborhood, not a good example, but the criminals know what neighborhoods to hit because they know what soft targets. And my guess is these are criminals with ransomwares that know where the soft targets are. You said you had a client that got hit 3 times. Well, they probably know, okay, we got that one and, going to keep hitting.
Well, I know, which is a little different, but say in Jamaica, they have a big problem with telemarketing scams. And they call people saying they want a lottery, you got to send them $1,000 to get the money and all these things. And those guys just resell the list to the guy down the street.
Yeah.
These 100 people bought the idea. Here you go. Give me the money for it. So there's definitely, through the dark web, there's all that stuff going on. People are soft targets, if you will. But when you go back, say, why would you pay them? If you're losing $100,000 and they want $40,000, and you can be back up, well then
it's an economics thing.
Yeah, that's all. It comes back down to money. But those devices, we immediately were building new devices, and we new force, new everything, and wiped that entire stuff out and started over.
Well, and the other thing is, you're not done with the 40, because you then have all the labor of doing the decryption, and you might have multiple keys, and look at what Atlanta's going through. It's pretty unbelievable.
Yeah. It took them a week to even get internet up at the airport, which I thought was just crazy. I mean, it hits city government. Why is the Wi-Fi at the airport for passengers?
They dropped that prophylactically. That was a decision they made.
Okay, they just killed it all.
We got called last week to go, of course, was another company, same thing with backups, and they had an in-house IT staff, and they asked us if we would negotiate with those people, and they had near 70 million documents.
We have one thing we do that seems very effective. I don't hear anybody else talking about it, but this is the CEO transfer fraud, or whatever it's called nowadays. It's very straightforward. There's a company password, and it's a single long phrase, and any transfer requires a verbal confirmation and the use of the password. Unless I'm missing something, that's pretty darn secure. And it's simple. We can teach people in a moment. We've got attorneys that can do this. I mean, you just tell them you need to use this password, you agree on a phrase, and you don't do it without verbal confirmation.
So let me throw out hypothetical questions to the room here, because I'm really interested to be truthful with the answer here if you can. So you've got a client, they've been hit by ransomware, they've agreed to pay the ransom. So you say to them, that was a tricky situation, that's cost you a few quid, now let's talk about shoring up your security going forward. And they go, nah, we've been hit once, it's unlikely we're going to be hit again. Who in the room here would keep that company on as a client? I'm seeing lots of shaking heads. But how many in the real world, I know of MSPs who have come across that scenario. They say, well, it's happened to us now, it's not going to happen again.
They say 70% of people who are hit by ransomware will get hit again.
Yeah.
And what I worry about is what I call a time bomb download that gets into your backup and just resides there. Maybe 6 months if it wants to. And they're seeing this in a residual and WannaCry, is, okay, you back up, you now see that it's executed as this particular signature, and you go and remove it. 2 days later, it all starts over again. Yeah. When you back up even further, it all starts over again, because you haven't identified the download that's hiding itself. WannaCry, they're seeing people now, if they plug their machines, there's that universal kill on the domain that was put out there, that if they plug the machines back in after getting rid of the WannaCry variant, it still came and started encrypting again, because it wasn't commuting, it didn't get the kill switch. So it was still there in their backups. That's my big worry.
And I was speaking to the team, Carl, from Datto just last week in Edinburgh in Scotland, and they were saying they're moving away from calling themselves a data backup company towards calling themselves a data security company. So they're talking about, with their virtualized backups and things, they're actually employing technology that will look at the backup and say, something here's changed, because the bad guys are getting really clever about this. They're saying we're going to put something on, and it doesn't matter if you've got backups going back 9 months, because we're not going to deliver the payload for for 12 months. So things are definitely changing. How do you see the difference in the world going forward between data backup and data security?
Well, security is everything. I mean, again, part of it is that once you eliminate servers, the backing up is really going to be cloud to cloud. So that's just a matter of time. But securing all that, because what happens, it's like anything else. If you have all of your data here encrypted in one cloud, and then you back it up encrypted into another cloud, you still have two sets of encrypted data. But, to the question of what do you do with a client who gets hit and then says, no, I don't want to spend any money on security? We had a slide about that. You can't care more about their network than they do.
Right.
So,
Yeah, very smart. Right, I think this is a conversation we're going to have to take down to Bourbon Street afterwards and see where we go. But thank you to the MSPs in the room. Thank you to my friend Carl Palicher.
Thanks for
having me. Really appreciate you all being here. And that's what's been going on this week.
You're listening to Frankly MSP.
I'll put a link to the WebRoot threat report in today's show notes at avic.com/franklymsp/016. Now we come to my interview with Ted Hulsy, Partner Marketing Lead at Dropbox. Ted has some great insights here coming out of his years in the channel, working as a vendor with partner MSPs to help their companies grow.
Hi, Ted. Welcome to Frankly MSP.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So happy to have you here today because I know you have a great deal of background and information for us on our topic today, which is building vendor relationships. So let's start with a basic question. Why are vendor relationships important for MSPs?
Well, it's really about getting to the next level of growth. I've known Arlen Sorensen over at HTG for a long time, and Arlen gives this great talk. He founded an MSP that he ran in Iowa, and he talks about the 5 barriers to growth. And ultimately, one of the big barriers to growth for a lot of MSPs is to really zero in and focus on relationships and vendor relationships more specifically, to really use your vendors as a way to grow at a best-in-class rate. There's kind of sometimes an adversarial relationship between vendors and partners. For Arlen, the light bulb eventually went off that, hey, my vendors are my partners. Let's zero in on that word partner and treat each other that way, and they help me take my growth to another level. And I think when you look at the market, you see MSPs and solution providers who are growing at a best-in-class rate. We're talking 20, 30% on the top line. They are companies often that have really strategic relationships with their vendors. And so until you really embrace vendor relationships, I don't think you can get to those kinds of levels of growth, especially as you get bigger.
And what are some examples of ways that vendors can provide extra help to partners?
There's a long list, but let's talk about some of the key ones. Just think about sales resources. Vendors have all kinds of people and expertise and bandwidth that can really help you as an MSP win and close more deals. Access to a systems engineer in a pre-sales environment can be vital to answering some of those tricky technical questions if you're dealing with a bigger deal or you're trying to get a particular solution correctly baked into your stack. If you have a good relationship with your channel account manager, you can bring them in on deals. You can go on face-to-face sales calls together. You can bring in an SE or a product expert to do a live demo over the phone. Sometimes you need access to a deal desk or special pricing. All of these sales resources can help you win deals, win bigger deals, get traction in a certain product category that's a growth category in your business, and help take it to another level. So extra sales resources is a big one. Training is another one. Most of the best vendors out there will have a diversity of training resources. They'll have online and free, but they'll also still have the more premium training offerings like live classroom training and certification. And often these things are expensive. And if you have a really good relationship with your vendor, and you've shown that you're investing in the relationship, you can often get those things comped or get them for free or get them heavily discounted. And again, that's all about beefing up the technical capability of your staff. Once you've done those things, once you've shown that you have a well-trained staff, you've gone deep with a vendor's product line, you've baked it into your solution stack, you've shown sales traction, then that vendor feels very confident, I think, and your channel account manager really feels confident in giving you more marketing resources to take the business to another level. And that can come in the form of leads. It can come in the form of you being the go-to partner in a particular geography, or it can come in the form of extra marketing dollars and support in the field. All of these things are ways for you to turbocharge and accelerate your growth and get more than your fair share of resources from your vendor.
Now, practically speaking, obviously the vendors can't do this with every single partner. So how do you make yourself stand out?
To me, the important thing is to really be genuine about relationships. Let's be candid. Most MSP business owners are technically minded. They come at problems from their vendor relationships, probably from, hey, I want to be baking in the best product that solves the client's problems technically and has the best value, has the best profit opportunity for me. But oftentimes, there's not a lot of technical differences between vendor A and vendor B at the end of the day. But what can make a real difference is that relationship.
You're listening to Frankly MSP.
At the end of the day, we buy products, we deploy products, but we really buy from other people. And we buy from organizations that have people that share our values and have a good cultural fit. So I would say being genuine about relationships and thinking about those strategically is the first and most important thing you need to do as a partner. On a very practical level, remember that your channel account team, those are human beings. Those are people on the other end of the phone. You may have met them in person. You may not have. If you haven't yet, try to make that a priority. Try to make sure you welcome them to your office. Try to make sure you make time when you're out at trade shows to meet somebody for coffee or a drink. But realize that your channel account management team, the sales lead and the SE lead or the technical lead, those folks are trying to make a living. They're trying to advance in their careers. Get to know them on a personal level. Try to find out things about them. Find out how they make money. How do they succeed in their career inside the vendor? Ask those questions like, how do you make your number? Because 90% of the time, partners don't ask the vendor person that. And when you ask that question, you all of a sudden, without any investment in anything other than being attentive and genuine about somebody's life, you immediately distinguish yourself from all the other mass of the partners out there. Build relationships and treat the other folks on the other side of the table as human beings, and you'll reap a ton of reward from doing that.
That one is a great tip because in that case, it doesn't matter how small you are or how much money you have to invest. It's just something that you can do.
Anybody can do it. And it doesn't matter how big you are or small. And I think a lot of partners struggle with this whole kind of chicken egg thing where a lot of partners that are growing or maybe feel like they're still small, there's no shame in that. Just be genuine and focused on quality relationships, and you can really differentiate and distinguish yourself in the market. It's all about getting more than your fair share of resources, whether they're sales support or MDF or field support for your marketing events or insights into the roadmap of the vendor. It's just about getting more than your fair share. At every point of your growth, just being a partner that is on the radar screen of your channel account manager team, not because you're the biggest or you're the most revenue, it's because you behave in the most relevant way and you show you're engaged. Having kind of that go-giver attitude, there are so many ways you can contribute to your vendor beyond just delivering top-line revenue growth on a product or in a territory.
What are some of those things?
First of all, there's many ways to just give feedback. The thing that a lot of vendors struggle with, whether it's on product or program, they just don't really know how they're doing. And there's a huge worry and a huge problem that you're not getting genuine feedback from your partner community. So participate in betas. Betas can be annoying. It's work. It does require, investment of your team in the process, but engage. Give feedback on products. Give feedback on the program. Make yourself available. Just say, may I give some advice? I mean, are you open to a conversation? And just do that extra work of writing down some feedback in an email or making time with somebody on the other side, whether it's an executive or a product manager or a channel account manager, to give them that feedback. There's a ton of informal channels to provide that feedback, and it's really valuable. Share success stories. the coin of the realm inside of these large vendor organizations is success stories. If the vendor helped you or a product helped you solve a big client challenge, write it up and say, hey, here's a brief summary of the story of how this product really helped us solve this client's problems. And by the way, I'd be more than happy to do a more formal partner success story or client case study on this. That's huge.
Yeah, that's a great one. I can tell you at Auvik that we definitely welcome all of that kind of feedback and success stories and just hearing what our partners have to say.
Yeah. And so there's a ton of these informal ways where it's just about communication and giving, but there's also a lot of formal ways. Join their partner council, engage with the execs, often at the annual trade shows, that sort of thing. They'll want to do one-on-one meetings. There's a lot of formal opportunities as well, and definitely avail yourselves of those. And again, don't disqualify yourself. A lot of partner councils, there's a very intentional approach from the vendor to have small, medium, and large partners on a partner council, because a lot of vendors have learned the hard way that you shouldn't just listen to your largest partners, because your medium and large partners of tomorrow are going to be your smaller partners today. And so don't, again, hamstring your own thinking by your own size. It's really about being engaged and providing that feedback and participating productively in forums like advisory councils and the like.
Now, most MSPs are probably dealing with a fairly sizable tech stack. So if you've got, let's say, 20 different platforms that you're using, how do you find the time to invest in these relationships with that many vendors?
Well, I think it's a part of your maturity. One thing that I would recommend is on somebody's job description on the team should be vendor management. If you're a 50-person MSP, this might be a full-time job. But if you're a 10 or 15-person company, this might be 1/3 to 1/2 of somebody's responsibility. There is, just let me be frank about it, there is a lot of grunt work. I mean, going in and discovering all the T's and C's around somebody's MDF program is a lot of work, and it's laborious. So make sure that you have somebody on staff who's in charge of vendor relationships and is the one who's going to invest the time to learn about how do you get the volume incentive program from HPE or whatever it is. Make that somebody's responsibility on your staff. That's one important step. The other important step is to prioritize. I mentioned Arlen Sorensen, a founder of HTG, at the top of our conversation. I got to know Arlen in my time when I was with SonicWall, and it was because his firm, HTS, he had identified SonicWall and HP and a handful of other vendors, 4 exactly, as his top vendors. So a huge part of the process is definitely prioritize your lead horses. What we talked about today in terms of giving, you can't give in a meaningful way to everybody. So definitely prioritize, say, your top 4 vendors, and make sure you know everybody up and down the food chain in those organizations. Make sure you know all the different ways you can engage with them, and make sure you've prioritized understanding everything about those vendors as a prerequisite to building those solid relationships.
You've mentioned Arlen Sorensen. Are there other examples that you know of where a partner has focused on these vendor relationships and it has helped them grow?
Yeah, I'll mention a couple different partners. A lot of these folks have talked publicly about how vendor relationships have helped them grow. So I'd point out Leif Wildenberg, the CEO of MyTech Partners. I got to know MyTech when I was facilitating the SonicWall VAR Council about 10 years ago. They were on the VAR Council. So again, that's one of the check boxes. If you can join an advisory council, do that. But MyTech, I think, as they've grown as a company, they're now becoming a nationwide MSP. And I've talked to Leif about this specifically. They just realized our vendors, they are the nationwide platform that's going to help us grow. And so MyTech, they took a spot on the SonicWall VAR Council and became really a go-to partner for SonicWall in big parts of the country when big, interesting, multi-site firewall deployments would come down the pike and that sort of thing. And so they've gotten a ton of rewards from their investment in that relationship. And it's really helped them start to transform their MSP business into a nationwide enterprise. Another example I would give is a gentleman, Lloyd Wolf from Wolf Consulting in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I got to know Lloyd in my time with eFolder, and we really helped Lloyd discover how important marketing was to his business. At critical junctions along the way, we gave him sales and marketing support, MDF funds, and content, and we helped him go out and do events. And Wolf Consulting recently just took a big private equity investment and took their business to another level. And Lloyd has told me specifically, that the investments that eFolder made in helping them on the marketing front were the thing that really got them to a rate of growth in the past 5 years that gave them the opportunity to take on extra outside investment and help solidify the firm's position as a really good player in the Pennsylvania market.
That's very cool. Some good stories there. Any parting advice on this topic of vendor relationships for MSPs?
Don't constrain your thinking. It's about what can you give? Everybody's got time to give to your vendors. And if you come at it with the right spirit of building relationships and being someone who's going to provide feedback and advice and be engaged, that's the start. We've given a long list of the tactical things you can do to get involved, but it really starts with having that mindset of being a go-giver and realizing that relationships are very powerful in building these businesses.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Ted.
It was my pleasure.
That was Ted Hulsy, the new partner marketing lead at Dropbox. Of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that we here at AVIC, we're a vendor. We offer network infrastructure, RMM. We are very happy to work with our partners in the ways Ted just talked about. We welcome your feedback. We welcome news about your wins. We'd love to hear ways we can better support you and your business. So I encourage you, if you are an AVIC partner, to reach out to your partner's success manager as a starting point for that. Now, Ted shared some success stories of MSPs already using vendor relationships in their business. Have you had similar successes? Or do you plan to start implementing some of Ted's ideas? Drop us a line on today's show notes at avic.com/franklymsp/016 and let us know. And that's a wrap. Remember to subscribe to Frankly MSP in iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever your favorite podcast app might be. You can find us on most of them. Next episode, I talked to Carolyn April, Senior Director of Industry Analysis at CompTIA, about her new research on operational efficiency in the channel. Till next time, this is Jennifer Tribe. Thanks for listening.
Frankly MSP, brought to you by AVIC Networks, the most efficient and profitable way to manage your clients' networks.